Hi, I'm Timothy Linsdau. I'm a video producer, Christian. Today I'm concerned about the country and especially college students. I'd like to talk about the deceptive and devastating college debt. One of the headlines in the paper today was why college students take on loans they can't repay. There's quite a bit of history, American history, connected with the college loan issues. In the early years, first 100 and some years of the country, there was very little type of loans available to go to college. Some private colleges started to offer their own over time. Eventually, the government gets involved. The biggest thing that started was the GI Bill. Starting GIs coming back that could go to college for very little, maybe even nothing. I'm sure it did a lot for the country and getting people educated, and especially with the boom of the industry that took place in the U.S. After World War II, the U.S. became the leading economic power in the world, and that was a big part of it. Now, as time went on, the Cold War started to have an effect, and Soviet Union started showing that their students were showing they were better educated and succeeding more, so that became a Cold War propaganda issue, and the federal government got involved and started pumping money into the education system. Eventually, private institutions then started to provide loans to students, and eventually the government, the U.S. government, took over loaning money for college educations, and it became so simple. It's somewhat like the crash of the housing in 2008. You're loaning money to people who can't repay, quite commonly. So we're ending up with the same disaster in another way. This probably may not be as big, but almost $1.5 trillion has been loaned out. That's outstanding debt for college education. And here's some examples in here. That's a psychological thing. Some are told that it's a good debt because it's an investment in your future. But when you understand how much debt people are carrying for this, here's an example. Jennifer Atkins of Jacksonville, Florida, 36 years old, first generation college student, got her diploma. But now it's a huge burden. She can't pay it. She has a $100,000 student loan, is unemployed, complications due to a second pregnancy, and she can't find a job enough to cover the daycare for her 2 kids and pay the loan, so she's stuck. Where's she going to go now? She doesn't have enough skills or education to get a job that would pay more. And this is just one person, and it must be millions tangled up in this. I have friends that I know, both have master's degrees, and they're paying $1,200 a month, I think, to try to cover their student loans, just as an example. Struggling, raising 3 kids in San Diego, and the price of housing here is extraordinarily expensive. Examples, they say in this article, try to avoid the trap. You should run the percentages that if it exceeds if your loan payment exceeds 10% of your take-home pay, it's too much. An example: if you were making $50,000 a year and you had a payment of $279 a month, that means it could support $26,000 in debt, and many people are well over that. Which is, does that become good debt? The thing is, you can't guarantee what your job is going to be. You can't guarantee how good you're going to be at that job. And most people have no idea what different careers support in wages. And one thing I discovered, I was going to school, to college. I did an article in the college newspaper on federal support for single mothers. And the more I got through it, the more it seemed that the system was really just designed to get single mothers through college and a degree and a government job. It was like a system rigged to just get government jobs. I suppose it's one way it works. One of the things with students, I mean, they're what, 17, 18, 19, never had to deal with living on their own, completing a budget, making all the monthly bills, and somebody comes along and says, you can borrow whatever you need, no problem, sign here. We'll take care of everything. Just think when you get your degree and you get out, no problem getting that paid back. And that's not what the reality is showing. So on and on it goes. They don't, the article says they're not connecting with reality, what that is going to amount to. They're overlooking future consequences. It's not real to them yet. But let's look at what's the federal debt now, 22 trillion? I mean, these young people look at, well, okay, my parents and all of their generation have created this debt. What's this small paltry sum or matter to me? They're not paying attention to their debt. There's it's a psychological thing going on here. The debt means nothing to anybody. This young woman we were talking about, she made the point that it was incremental that she got into the debt. Say $3,000 here, $5,000 there. Not really paying attention to, and I think many of us have done that a little bit at a time. All of a sudden we know we got a lot of debt. And it's not necessarily real to the student at the time. There should be mandatory career counseling with somebody that's really, I would say somebody outside of the college should be giving them the counseling. How much is it going to cost? How much is their payments going to be? There are sites that you can look up that will give you an idea of what different jobs will, how much they pay, so that you can get an example of that. I've heard stories. I mean, San Diego's a college town. There's some really wonderful universities here of kids graduating with philosophy degrees, maybe psychology degrees. Not to knock anyone in particular, but maybe a journalism degree, which I have, which may not pay enough to pay these heavy tuitions off. And that's where you start considering, well, can I go to a community college, a state university? How can I reduce these costs? My sons went to state universities, lived at home, had a job, grants and scholarships. When they graduated or left college, they didn't have any debt. We were paying attention to that. It mattered to us a lot to watch that. So it's nice that somebody gets to go to a big name college, but there are studies out there to show that it doesn't make that much difference in your income. So it should be thought through. Students lack financial education. Another one is Susan Dawson, of 47, has a PhD in history. She's making these payments in a second job. Now, you imagine that, having a PhD and the amount of work it took to get there? She says she feels stupid for not understanding what a six-figure debt would do to her later in life. So things she wishes she had considered were typical earnings in her field, her future monthly student loan payments, how student loan interest works. Your interest is compiling the whole time you're in school before you even start paying this. There are some loans that you can start paying down that interest sooner. And they're not real cheap interest rates. It's more like 5.5%. I mean, you can buy a house for less interest than that. So there we are. But there's a lot of things connected with this. When the federal government finally took over the mass amount of loaning this money out, let's get down to brass tacks here with these universities and colleges. All of a sudden you open up the federal coffers. You've opened them up for this money to flow into universities and colleges. What do you think might happen? Raises, knew this, knew that. Did you know since 1980 to present day, the increase in college costs is 260% increase over those years. Consumer increase has been 120%. So this is well over twice the consumer cost increase. That's good evidence that people have taken advantage of the getting a hold of federal money, and we've all seen it everywhere. I think the student debt loan is just another example of our careless behavior with money, thinking that there's a bottomless pit that's going to will never drain it dry, but we've more than drained it dry. What now? So it's a deceptive and destructive, terrible thing that's happened here. So we press on, but people should pay attention to it now that it's in the news again with these college entrance cheating. So pay attention, and there's nothing wrong with vocational jobs. There's many vocations that pay very good, and you're not going to have that kind of debt, and you'll have something to enjoy also. That's now another story. So I'm Timothy Linstow. Like and comment on my video. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.